Okay, so now we're going to talk about Zola, and why don't you start off, Stephen, because I'm going to look up the director's name. Okay.
Yes, and how to pronounce her first
Yeah, name. Hopefully it comes with a pronunciation guide.
I just realized as I started to talk here, it's irrelevant, but there's a theme here, and as I'm sitting in my living room, my wife's actually in Sacramento, but we're doing two movies today that were my idea that we should watch them, and her idea that they weren't any good. Well, she liked Licorice Pizza, okay. Zola, her comment was bad decision after bad decision. She got
like directorial decision.
No, I think she meant the characters, and so
got it. Okay.
Interested in this because she thought these people are all too stupid for words, and why do I care about them? She has this usually comes up with television shows, but it goes for both that and movies. She thinks some people are just pathetic. It's not you and me, but characters say. And she doesn't understand why anybody would want to spend some time watching pathetic people. So she don't know that she used the word about Zola, but when you've got a movie where the main character, Zola, the title character, gets into these situations that she didn't want to be in, and I think the appeal of the movie is partly the ways in which she gets stuck in that situation, and it wasn't really all on her, and then she tries to maneuver her way best she can, and life is tough when you don't have any money, all this. I can tell you that my wife just thought, well, she is stupid. Why did she listen to Riley Keough in the first place? And then of course Riley Keough, it's not that my wife hates Riley Keough, but the character, whoa, was that stupid. So getting that out of the way, which is, like I say, it's kind of irrelevant. I was disappointed in Zola, which doesn't mean I thought it was worthless or anything, but I realized after it was over that I had high hopes, and I didn't feel like they were there. I thought that the acting was okay. I liked that Ronnie Keough has said in more than one interview that she basically, maybe she and the director decided that she was supposed to sound like a dumb white person who was trying to talk black and didn't even realize how annoying it was and how insulting it was. Well, she did a good job because, just want to strangle her pretty much every time she opened her mouth. And you may already be ready to bring this up, but there's some irony, I think, in that her grandfather's Elvis.
Yeah, I knew you were going to mention Elvis there.
But on the other hand, Riley Keough has been good in a lot of things. She's earned more than just she's Elvis's granddaughter. But in terms of the concept of this movie, where she's a white person trying to act like a black person, she didn't do it as good as her grandfather. Let's put it that way. Go ahead.
Well, just on that note, I was going to say, the white person trying to act like a black person. Her character is kind of more. I wrote it down the way I wanted to say it. Her character is basically a more benign version of her role from American Honey. The American Honey is not as exaggerated, but she is also kind of at the I don't know how permissible it is to use the term white trash. I think it's like the last permissible term to use. Her character is very similar in American Honey, but obviously this is a much broader, more comic version of that. And you do think of her grandfather, and you think about the way that Albert Goldman, I've never read the book, but the way Marcus says that Albert Goldman portrayed Elvis.
Yeah. I think that American Honey and it's slipped on my mind now. There are a couple movies, Young People, Florida, Road Trip,
It's a genre. It's my first note here, Stephen.
But I like it. I like it. I like those other movies. Why didn't I like Zola? And I'm not quite sure why. I'd have to go watch American Honey again to figure it out. I seem to remember American Honey there wasn't a lot of grown-ups. Wasn't that American Honey? Wasn't it mostly they weren't little kids, but they were kids, and there was like one adult
Yeah, only just the three adults, those guys
I
that
like
picked up.
I like that. I like those better just for starters.
Okay.
I don't know why it popped in my mind. If you've ever seen Agnes Varda's Vagabond, which
I have, yeah, very
okay.
much. Yeah, there's similarities there for sure.
See, I love that movie, but whatever. In the case of this one, our adults, Coleman Domingo. I love Coleman Domingo. I never even heard of him.
He
3 years
plays
ago.
X, or the character's name is Abagunde.
Yeah. Anyway, he's on Euphoria, the TV show.
Okay.
For that, I'd never heard of him, and his character in Euphoria isn't anything like this pimp in this movie. But I was just so happy to see him. And one thing, and maybe you got this, he went back and forth, and he had 2 accents.
Oh, the first time his accent changed, I found that like startling.
I never did figure out what it was, although he talked to somebody on the phone, like his mom or something, and he was laying thick on the Jamaican or whatever it was. But yeah, I never figured out why he even used.
He was talking just like a regular American guy, and then he got angry and he suddenly switched to the Jamaican accent, and it was whoa, what's going on?
No, I didn't get that one at all. For me, if I was gonna single out pathetic, the boyfriend, is that what we call him? The boy of Riley Keough who follows her around sniffing after her.
Now he's interesting because I'm in the middle or under the 3rd season of Succession. Do you watch Succession?
No.
Okay, so he's Nicholas Braun is his name.
Right.
And he plays this really interesting, sometimes very annoying character in Succession, but so at the same time, a lot like his character in Zola, in that he's so sort of needy and kind of annoying, but also totally unlike his character in Zola. So he seems to be someone to watch anyway. Got a lot of attention.
I don't know that I would complain about the actor, but for me, when he finally says, "I'm going to kill myself," no, you're not going to get. They're all laughing because
they're laughing. I know. And he can't even kill himself. He can't even kill himself.
But he didn't even succeed. And then next scene, they're driving in the car, and Coleman Domingo say, "You better not die on me."
Pathetic, absolutely.
He was pretty bad.
So you said compared it, and you were saying it sort of belongs with other films. It's a new genre. There's American Honey, there's Spring Breakers, The Florida Project, Red Rocket. I suggested, Red Rocket very much fits in. And then there's even, that's like the Florida version, just these people who are kind of awful in so many ways. And you could add, there's a California version too, although the characters tend to be kind of rich kid California characters. The Bling Ring and Palo Alto. It was just, they're films about these bad people, amoral people. Except for, I'm going to put American Honey off to the side because I do think that's a legitimately great film, and there's art there and there's thought. And some people think Spring Breakers is great. I watched it twice, and to me, it's basically a freak show. So that's a genre now, and I don't know what to call it. And many of the films are shot very poetically too. It's like meditative, poetic films about awful people.
Well, I'm interested that you talk about the people are awful. I have a tendency, if I'm captured for some reason, charmed or whatever, then I don't think of them as awful people. So
it's probably a broad generalization. They're not all awful.
Yeah, Sid Ned Vicious and Sid and Nancy isn't a bad guy. He's
Which
just
guy?
Sid Vicious and Sid and Nancy.
Oh yeah, okay, no.
It's a junkie, the Florida Project, which I really loved. The kids in that movie, especially the daughter, that actress is so remarkable.
Yeah, the kids were fine, and I like that movie too.
Yeah, if I think about it, I think I don't know if she was a bad person.
Weren't there guardians? Wasn't their guardian mom a terrible person though? Wasn't she like strung out on dope?
And then Willem Dafoe, he was a fine guy. He
was
that's
true. That's true.
Absentee, God knows what he was, but he was so sweet in that movie, really.
No, he was good. I was thinking more of the mom in that film, I think.
Yeah, she was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Um,
I like it when and I don't know if it's even it's a reverse attempt. I like when we're not told what the value judgment should be. We're allowed to figure out on our own, oh, that person's not a very good person, or that person's actually got some good qualities. It's a turnoff for me when I watch something and I feel like there's an anvil saying this person is bad because they smoke or whatever. I just top of my head.
right.
Uh, I prefer to think to myself, man, this person smokes a lot. That's not a good quality. That kind of thing. So uh, I know there are people in movies that I like, and they have mostly all bad qualities, but I like to figure it out for myself. Sid and Nancy, since I brought it up, one of the things I've always loved about that movie is you've got these awful people, and it's very clear, and they're bad for each other, they're bad for everyone around them, and yet, I guess that's what I mean. You get to figure that out for yourself. They're on their own level. You can almost understand why they were together, and it didn't say drugs are bad. It just showed you how drugs are bad, you know. And then to me, there's a difference there. So that
You know, there are a billion films about bad people. I just sort of group them together, mostly because of the Florida geography, I think, and the fact that it was people who economically are, you know, definitely on the wrong side of the economic scale or whatever, however you want to phrase that. Now, Elvis's granddaughter got that. So for me, now I've got a couple of really broad questions on the film, see what you think. But I'll say that for me, the most memorable scene was where they were in the car and they were going crazy to that hip hop song, Hannah Montana, which is by somebody named Migos, who I'm not up on hip hop these days, but he's got a lot of songs on the Atlanta soundtrack too. I found that scene very sinister. You can like watch the scene intact on YouTube, and the song combined with just the way the lyrics, clearly partly about drugs and partly about Miley Cyrus twerking at the award show, and the way they were just going nuts, that song, I did find it kind of sinister. That was the most memorable scene in the film for me. Now, here's the questions I was going to ask you. So this is a film based on tweets.
Yes,
I just wrote, what is this about? Is this just a weird story, or is it actually a comment on the media, the times we live in? Is it a subversive film? Is it just a silly film? I liked it. I liked it a little less the second time. I liked it. I put it on my year end in the message board poll. I had a third or fourth, which it says more about how few good films I saw. I wouldn't put it that highly now. It's like a 6.5 for me. But what is it about?
No, I think it's a great question. I've read enough, I don't know enough, but I haven't yet seen anything from the director or the Zola character who's real to tell me exactly what the answer is. But I did feel like we can make a movie out of tweets, you know, and then isn't that amazing? And of course, it kind of doesn't quite happen that way. The tweets are real, and then the person is in Rolling Stone. Someone wrote an article where they actually went and checked all the stuff out, and it was mostly true, what she had tweeted. So now you have that, and I feel like that's where the let's make a movie of this came through, not when she was on Twitter. Does that matter? No, not really. Who cares why they made it? But I did think at some point, maybe they're kind of proud of that part. And it's like, well, we don't have to actually take care of this, and this that you normally do in a movie because that's based on tweets. Isn't that cool? I liked at the point, I can't remember, it's more than once, when all of a sudden we got Riley Keough's tweeting. You know, we got a different narrator for a little bit there. And her version was different, but she also starts the same way. Now, if you want to know how I got together with this bitch and how I got rid of her. It's a long, long story. I thought I liked that kind of thing, you know, the multiple narrators.
I put down, it had the Rashomon thing happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the end, what you say, what was it about? You know, you could, well, if you ask me, I'd say it was based on these tweets, and then I'd tell you what it was about. I mean, that seems almost like the most remarkable thing about it. It's not fair, I don't think, to the acting, because the actors I thought were all very good, but that's not what it's not really about. Oh, it was based on a tweet. That's not an about. You know, it certainly had the context where if you wanted to, you could say things about lower classes or working classes and stuff.
Yeah.
Certainly, I feel like if I did watch it another time, that I would be more sympathetic to Zola, because even though she's caught up in these bad decisions, I suspect she has fewer options in her life than a lot of people. And I can imagine her getting caught up in it. And once you're involved in it, and then you've got this creepy, violent pimp, and you're in the middle of nowhere as far as you're concerned, because Florida isn't Chicago or whatever, I can see that it would take her a long time to extract her from that. And the one time when she thinks maybe she'll get extracted from it, Coleman Domingo comes out and sees her at by the swimming pool and gives her a bunch of money because she's so good at pimping.
Yeah.
But then, and she says, "Oh, so I can go home." Oh, you don't get to go home, and you realize she's stuck. So I may need to be more sympathetic towards at least her character.
The director's name is Janicza Bravo, Janicza Bravo. And I was going to say, you can tell it's directed by a woman when they have all that male nudity. But you know, you just okay, it's 2022, so we won't see the females naked. We'll see all these guys, some of them who are like 50 and 55. And
I read a couple reviews that made mention of that and said something about the female gaze and the male gaze.
Yeah, so I thought that was very. Yeah.
And that particular line, though, since the Euphoria season 2 just ended, I just spent 2 months where every episode had 20 wieners in there and hardly any naked ladies. It was as if, oh, you know, this show, we show male nudity, so let's make sure everybody sees it a bunch of times. It's as egregious as female nudity in an R-rated comedy from the 70s. So I know what you're saying about this movie, but I barely noticed it, I have to admit. Because
the director even did, I think Sofia Coppola did the same thing in The Virgin Suicides. In the midst of all the male nudity, one guy that I guess, what was Riley Keough's character named? Anyway, that she really liked, she put a heart over top, a heart popped up on the screen. Anyway, and a couple more things. I thought the weirdest character in some ways was Abagunde's girlfriend. The actress's name is Sophie Hall. You know how that girlfriend would show up in a couple scenes?
Yeah, she made it where I had to look her up, maybe just like you.
Yeah,
but an odd one.
She was weird. And the prayer circle in the strip club, that was weird and extremely profane. You know, thought it was a real prayer circle until she started being specific about what they were wishing for and praying for. The ending, I didn't know what to make of the ending. It was just kind of a non-ending. There was a nice girl group song at the end. I looked them up. They're the Cliquettes, they're called. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I wanted to say, where very specifically, you know, I said, what is it about? Is it a comment on the times? And I don't know how I missed this the first time. I either missed it altogether or I saw it and didn't give it a second thought, but it jumped out at me the second time where I don't know who's doing the driving. I think it's Nicholas Braun, the dumb boyfriend. He passes the cops really beating up some guy, and it just sort of passes by without comment. And it's very clearly a reference to, blanking out now. Last year's huge story, the murder. You know, George.
George Floyd. There's so many. That's why you can't.
There's
That's
so
why
many.
like,
Maybe that's it. I was thinking in particular about George Floyd. But you're right. There's so many, and very clearly that was a comment on the Times, and it was very subtle. You know, it just says he drives by, doesn't pay any mind to it, and they're just going off on this guy. So you know, it's a weird film. I do think the director's trying to say something about the world, just, you know, media, social media, something. I don't pretend to understand it. I guess, you know, if I thought about it, I might come up with something, but I think it's more than just we can do this, we can make this movie cheaply and it'll be a bit of a novelty. I think she really does see this story as representing something about the world that we live in.
well, I'm glad that movies like this get made in the world of Marvel. You know, it's like I'm glad there's.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about that.
It's just I wouldn't be surprised if in 20 years she's made 15 more movies and they're all really interesting and stuff. Paul Thomas Anderson's had a long time to figure out how he's going to do his movies, but this was like her hard 8.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And not everybody's Orson Welles. Their first movie isn't the one, and so I felt benevolent toward the movie, even as we're talking, without particularly liking it, and that's okay, you know.
Two of the films that we have mentioned in this discussion were both directed by Sean Baker, The Florida Project and Red Rocket, both of which I liked, and I didn't like Tangerine. I don't know why, but I didn't like Tangerine. Went to see Florida Project with that in mind, but ended up liking that. And Red Rocket I liked even better. So,
maybe that relates because Tangerine, I think, is first for him.
Yeah, it was his first.
Isn't that the one that was shot on an iPhone, if I remember?
Yeah, and that
right?
seemed to be the biggest story about the film, that it was the first.
Gimmick, you see this guy, you think, oh, geez, he made a movie on an iPhone. Well, I'm glad that happened, but that is a good movie. But then he makes good movies. And so you want to go back and say, not you're going to go back and like the movie you didn't like, but that you appreciate that everybody's got to get their feet wet. And, the thing is, though, if I were to watch Tangerine again, I might not say, I can see where the Florida Project came from, because it's still a kind of a leap there. There's a director, I say a director, he's a big guy now, Gareth Edwards. And the first movie he made was a dinky little low budget monster movie. It might have been called Monsters now that I think about it. It had one person I had heard of. It takes place in Mexico, and it's very low budget. It's pretty good movie though. And
who is
somebody
he now? You say he's a big guy now. I don't know.
Because he makes this little movie that I'm surprised anybody saw. I'm surprised I saw it, but it showed talent. And the next thing you know, he's making a Godzilla movie. I think it was a Godzilla movie. He's made nothing but big budget movies ever since. It's kind of like when studios said to Sam Raimi, we want you to take over the Spider-Man franchise. And I'm thinking, I love Sam Raimi, but why did they, what did they look at Evil Dead 2 and think this guy is who we want to give our money to? And I thought of that Gareth Edwards because he made this little movie that was very cheap. I think if I remember right, he'd shoot it in the daytime, then he'd go home and in his motel room, he'd edit it on his Apple laptop. That's how cheap it was, and innovative in that way. But you could watch that and say that's a good director. I don't know, but with Tangerine, I don't know if I'd still think it was that good. It was good that it was made, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we forget, you know, when I thought of Vagabond, Agnes Varda made movies for what, 40 years, 50 years, and not everyone was great. But when she gets to a place like Vagabond, she's been making movies for 35 years. She's got her own way of telling this particular story, and and you give her the benefit of the doubt because you know of her work. But if you never heard of her and you see her first, whatever movie it is that you see first, doesn't even matter if it is her first, then you might not want to give her the benefit of the doubt. And that might not be too fair to people like the woman who directed Zola. Maybe in the future, like I say, in the future, we'll say A Star is Born.
I like Vagabond. I do like American Honey better of those two films.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was great, Stephen. Another two up on the shelf. I'll leave it to Scott to sort out the two segments. I just hang on for a second after we finish here. So this is Phil and Steve finishing up with another installment of What They Saw, What They Said. I get that wrong every time. What They Said. Stephen, Phil, and Scott stay home and watch movies, and we'll be back in another few weeks.